After meeting up with his mistress, the man is about to leave. But just as he finishes packing his bags, someone knocks him out cold. When he finally wakes up, he finds his lover lying on the floor, no longer breathing. Doria crawls over in a panic, pulls Laura into his arms, and screams for help. Just then, the police break down the door and pin him to the ground without a word, clearly treating him as the killer. After checking the room, the police find that the doors and windows were locked from the inside and could only be opened with a special key. They find no trace of a third person, and even the air vent is sealed shut. Even if someone had been there, there was no way out. So the well-known businessman Doria naturally becomes the prime suspect. Although he pays a huge amount of money to get out on bail, the police still keep him under 24-hour surveillance. With only 9 hours left before the final hearing, Doria spends a fortune to hire a top defense attorney, Goodman, to represent him. Goodman arrives 3 hours earlier than scheduled, and she brings him a piece of bad news. The prosecution has found a key witness, and this person's testimony could be enough to close the case for good. The sudden appearance of this witness shatters Doria's last bit of hope, so he quickly starts explaining every detail of that day. He says that he and Lara were threatened by a mysterious person, which is why they brought $1 million in cash to the hotel. Otherwise, their affair would be exposed. But once they arrived at the hotel, there was no mysterious blackmailer, so Doria realized they had been played. The two of them packed their bags and prepared to leave, only to be attacked out of nowhere. Goodman still has doubts about him. According to the police report, there was no one else at the scene, and the murder weapon only had Doria's fingerprints on it. Doria claims someone set him up on purpose, but when asked who it was, he refuses to say. Seeing that he still will not tell the truth, Goodman pulls out a newspaper. The report about a missing person case makes Doria's pupils tighten. Goodman then presses him, saying that only if he tells her every detail of the case can she know how to defend him. Under Goodman's sharp stare, Doria finally gives in and tells her the so-called truth. 3 months earlier, Doria told everyone he had gone to France, but in reality, he was secretly meeting Laura at a private estate. On their way back to the city, an elk suddenly ran into the road. While trying to dodge it, their car crashed into an oncoming vehicle. After they managed to steady the car, they rushed out to check and found that the young driver, Daniel, was no longer breathing. Doria's first instinct was to call the police, but Laura stopped him. If they reported it, their affair would be exposed. She also noticed that Daniel had not been wearing a seatbelt, so the crash could easily be blamed on reckless driving. So Laura suggested they just leave. The man was already dead anyway, and no one would suspect them. But just as they were about to leave, their car would not start no matter what they tried. Even worse, another car was coming down the mountain road toward them. Seeing this, Laura quickly ran back to the small car and laid Daniel's body down. Then she pulled out a notebook and pretended she was discussing accident compensation with Doria. When the passing driver asked what happened, Laura handled it calmly. But then the phone inside the small car suddenly started ringing. Laura reacted fast. She rushed over, hung up the call, and lied that she had been speaking with the insurance company about the claim. The passing driver saw that both of them seemed fine and did not notice anything suspicious, so he drove away. For the moment, the crisis was over, but the body in the wrecked car had to be dealt with as soon as possible. Otherwise, that driver would soon realize they were lying. So they immediately split up. Doria would take care of the body in the car, while Laura stayed behind and waited for roadside assistance. Under the cover of night, Doria drove the car with the body inside to a reservoir. It was the perfect place to dump both of them. But just as he was about to push the car into the water, he heard movement in the bushes. Luckily, it was only an elk. He kept going and pushed Daniel and the car into the water together. Only after the car and Daniel were completely swallowed by the freezing lake did he finally leave in relief. Not long after Doria left, Laura, who had stayed behind, ran into a kind old man who offered to tow her car back to his place for repairs. Laura hesitated, but it was already getting dark, and there was no telling how long it would take for roadside assistance to arrive. Besides, she still had to meet up with Doria, so Laura accepted the old man's help. On the way, the old man chatted with her as he drove, trying to ease her nerves. His name was Tomas Garrido, a retired mechanic. His wife Elvira was a retired stage actress, but cancer had forced her to give up her career. They had moved there because of his wife's illness. Thomas ran a repair shop while his wife worked at a hotel. Soon they arrived at Thomas's house. Elvira noticed blood on Laura's wrist, and Laura quickly explained that it came from the elk. The couple had their doubts, but since the area was a nature reserve where elk often appeared, they did not think too much of it. Thomas then towed the car into his garage and began repairing it, but he accidentally found an expensive men's lighter inside. Since the repair would take some time, Elvira invited Laura inside to sit and wait. But once Laura walked in, she noticed a photo on the table. Elvira smiled and said the person in the picture was her son Daniel. Laura immediately became tense, because the bright, smiling young man in that photo was the driver they had just hit and killed. At that moment, she was sitting inside the victim's home, drinking tea poured by the victim's mother, while the victim's father repaired her car. Fear and guilt swallowed her whole. Just then, the car was fixed. Laura thanked them and prepared to leave. At that moment, Elvira said she needed to call her son. What she did not know was that Daniel's phone was in Laura's pocket, because Laura had grabbed it while dealing with the passing driver. Laura hurried back into the living room, trying to hide it, but the phone still began to ring. Before Tomas came in, Laura silenced the phone and hid it under a sofa cushion. When Elvira called her son again, the ringtone came from beneath the couch cushion. They found the phone, but the couple was filled with confusion, because their son never left home without it. Laura was terrified by this sudden situation. She made an excuse that it was getting late, then rushed into the car and fled. After that, she drove to meet Doria. Once they reunited, Laura told him what had just happened. To keep the truth from coming out, they immediately decided to destroy the hit-and-run car completely, leaving no record behind. They also agreed to never contact each other again and to take this secret to the grave. After returning home, Doria pretended he had just come back from France and even reported to the police that his car had been stolen. But a lie is still a lie. A few days later, news of Daniel's disappearance spread across the entire city. Using the license plate number Thomas had written down, the police quickly traced the car back to Doria. Luckily, Doria had prepared ahead of time. With his business trip documents and the stolen car report, he temporarily cleared his name. Just when Doria thought the matter was over, the news suddenly reported that Daniel had embezzled money from the bank and fled out of guilt, which shocked Doria. He met with Laura right away and learned she had used her husband's bank position to frame innocent Daniel. Doria was frightened by Laura's cruelty, as if he were seeing this woman for the first time. Then Laura threatened him in return, saying they were in this together and both had to keep the secret. She also had photos proving Doria had never gone to France. The two parted on bad terms, but they silently reached the same agreement: never say a word about it again. Doria thought that would be the last time they ever met, but then he received an email from a mysterious person. The person claimed to know all of Doria's secrets and demanded $1 million in cash to be delivered to a specific hotel room. The sender also ordered him to bring Laura and not bring any phones. Otherwise, the full truth about how they hid the body and destroyed the evidence would be exposed. Doria guessed that the blackmailer was probably the driver who had passed by the crash scene that day. That person might have seen the blood at the crash site, or maybe even hidden on the mountain and watched them move the body. The noise Doria heard before pushing the car into the water could also have come from that person hiding in the dark. And when Doria met with Laura later, he had also seen that driver outside the cafe window. So Doria and Laura followed the instructions and arrived at the hotel one after the other. But the blackmailer never showed up. Instead, they received a text sent from Laura's phone. After that, Doria was attacked from behind and knocked unconscious. When he woke up, Laura was lying in a pool of blood, and the police were already outside the door. After hearing Doria's full version of events, the seasoned Goodman immediately spots several major holes in the story. If the blackmailer really wanted money, he should have taken the cash and left as agreed, not killed someone and left the money at the scene. There is also another strange point. The hotel room's doors and windows show no signs of forced entry, so how did the killer get in and out so freely? Faced with Goodman's questions, Doria has no answer. So Goodman builds a brand new defense strategy for him around these holes in the case. She suggests that the real blackmailer was never the driver, but Tomas, the father who lost his son. From the detail of Laura adjusting the seat, Tomas realized there had been another person at the scene. As the car owner, Doria naturally became his first suspect. But after seeing that the police did not believe him, Tomas decided to take revenge on his own. Goodman also finds a crucial clue in the hotel crime scene photos. One of the hotel employees at the scene is Daniel's mother, Elvira. Based on these details, Goodman begins reconstructing the entire revenge plan. Daniel's mother used her job to secretly hand Tomas a window-opening tool, allowing him to hide inside the hotel room closet ahead of time. After Doria and Laura checked in, the old man suddenly appeared and knocked Doria unconscious. Then he beat Laura to death with a blunt object and replaced all the fingerprints on the weapon with Doria's. After that, he used the special tool to open the window, climbed along the ledge to the room next door that had been opened in advance, and successfully escaped the crime scene. When the police entered the room to arrest Doria, his wife quietly slipped in, locked the doors and windows, and created what looked like an impossible locked room murder. This story could help Doria beat the charge of murdering Laura, but it could not erase his guilt in the fatal crash and the disposal of Daniel's body. To clear Doria completely, Goodman proposes an even bolder plan. She asks Doria to point out the exact location of the sunken car, then plans to place Laura's personal belongings inside the vehicle at the bottom of the lake. That way, the police would think Laura was the one who destroyed the evidence, and that her death was Tomas's revenge. At most, Doria would only be guilty of hiding information. As for the exact location of the body, Goodman would send the address to the police anonymously. But Doria still does not dare reveal the secret, not even to the lawyer he supposedly trusts most. And he is even more worried about the prosecution witness Goodman mentioned. At the time of the incident, the passing driver clearly saw Doria's face. His own lawyer is absent right now because he is trying to find that driver and bribe him into giving Doria an alibi. So Doria decides to keep hiding the location of the body. But Goodman suddenly admits that there is no key witness at all. She lied only to make Doria reveal the details. Only then could she build the perfect defense and protect her undefeated record. Seeing Goodman act so honest and professional, Doria finally lets his guard down and draws the exact location where he sank the car. Just as Goodman is about to finalize the defense plan, Doria reveals an even more brutal truth. Before he pushed the car into the water, the noise he heard did not come from the bushes. It came from the trunk. It turns out Daniel was not dead at the time. He had only passed out. But Doria had already gone too far to turn back, so he heartlessly pushed the car in anyway. This cruel truth makes Goodman's expression freeze. She immediately condemns Doria for his cold-blooded behavior. But Doria shows no guilt at all. He arrogantly says a lawyer's only job is to win his case, and nothing else matters. Doria's angry outburst makes Goodman completely overturn all of her previous assumptions. If Doria had been the one directing everything from the start, then every piece suddenly fits. After the crash, it was Laura who wanted to call the police, confess, and take responsibility. And the one who deliberately stopped everything and led the body disposal cover-up from beginning to end was Doria himself. It was Doria who insisted on destroying the evidence. It was Doria who took Daniel's wallet. And it was Doria who used his legal connections to create fake evidence that Daniel had embezzled bank funds and fled. Laura, the woman Doria painted as a vicious femme fatale, was actually the one who had been tormented by guilt all along. Because of that, Laura developed severe anxiety and eventually decided to confess everything to Thomas and Elvira. The blackmail email was actually sent by Laura. She wanted to give the $1 million to Tomas's family as compensation, and she had even planned to turn herself in. Using a public phone, she lied about a witness blackmailing them, arranged for Doria to meet her at the hotel, and scheduled a timed text to force him to show up. Then, inside the hotel room, Laura told him the whole truth and urged Doria to turn himself in with her. But to protect his reputation, his status, and his life, Doria picked up a room decoration and beat Laura to death. After killing her, Doria realized the window would not open, so he could not fake an escape route. With the police about to arrive, he had no way to run, so he injured himself and made up a story about an invisible killer. After hearing Goodman's analysis, Doria says nothing, almost as if he is admitting that this is the truth. But if Tomas already knew the truth, why did he and his wife stay silent? Because they knew Doria would never reveal where he sank the body. Without a body, it would be hard to convict him, so they had been waiting all this time. Goodman then points to the building across the street, where someone is watching the room through binoculars. That person is Daniel's father. Goodman says she had already been followed by Tomas and Elvira. Because she sensed something was off, she took this case before retiring. Then she takes out photos from the hotel scene and points out the key flaw in the case. Daniel's mother has no reflection in the mirror, which means the photo was doctored. That alone proves the earlier testimony was all a lie. Only now does Doria realize that the top lawyer in front of him is far more terrifying than he imagined. Just as his mind begins to spiral, the sudden sound of a voicemail cuts through his thoughts. Goodman uses the moment to suggest a break, giving Doria time alone while she goes downstairs for coffee. After all, it is going to be a long night. Doria then answers a call from his personal lawyer and learns that the driver has accepted the bribe and is preparing to leave. Everything is under control. Doria finally breathes a sigh of relief, but then harsh interference crackles through the call, and a blot of ink spreads across his clothes. He places the leaking pen on the table, only to discover a note filled with accusations. Sensing something was off, he opened the folder and found the police files were completely blank. Then he unscrews the pen and discovers a tiny listening device hidden inside. Every crime he just confessed to, the location of the body, the truth about the crash, and the murder itself has all been recorded. As if realizing something, Doria walks to the window and looks toward the building across the street. There, the powerful and intimidating lawyer Goodman is standing right beside Daniel's father. Then Goodman removes her contact lenses, peels off the rubber prosthetic skin on her face, and finally pulls off the silver wig from her head. It turns out she was never the famous lawyer Goodman at all. She was Daniel's mother, Elvira. From the very beginning, this was a trap set by Daniel's parents to uncover the truth. They planned everything with precision, having the mother disguise herself as the undefeated top lawyer and use her acting skills to pressure Doria little by little until she broke through the killer's mental defenses. In front of someone he believed was a safe ally, Doria personally confessed to every one of his sins. At that moment, the doorbell suddenly rings. Standing outside is the real Goodman, finally arriving late, and what awaits Doria now is the harshest punishment the law can deliver. The truth may be buried under lies, and evil may hide behind power, but justice never truly disappears. With intelligence and persistence, Daniel's parents tore through every layer of disguise and left the cold-blooded killer with nowhere to hide. The strongest force in this world has never been money or manipulation, but conscience, courage, and the stubborn pursuit of justice. May every crime be paid for, and may every truth finally come to light.